Oh, there it goes.
I could do it for you if you'd like. Do you want me to go forward or?
That would, let's go back one, please. Sorry, back to where we started. All right. Redistricting. Redistricting is the process of adjusting our voter division boundaries with the primary objective of population equality between our divisions. And our 2021 redistricting was triggered by the 2020 census. Next slide, please. When the data was released, when the 2020 census data was released, that got our process going here at Padre Dam in our redistricting process. Redistricting first became on the board's agenda in November of 2021 and includes going through the process through today with our second public hearing. Next slide, please. The primary objective of redistricting is equal population between our divisions. However, secondary considerations can be considered. Secondary considerations, there can be secondary considerations. Sorry. Secondary considerations can have exceptions made to them, primarily when we're trying to make sure that we have equal population distribution to balance the balance of population between those divisions. We can have exceptions to them. What I also included on this slide are considerations not included, which was a response to comments received in the last public hearing on criteria that didn't play a part in our redistricting process. That's why they're included here. Next slide, please. Districting's approach utilizes in-house GIS staff with Esri's redistricting software. The data we used was 2020 census data, which provided geography and total population at the census block level. The census blocks were kept whole and their population and geographies intact through this process. When we say census block, a census block is the smallest unit of census geography. Advance the slide, please. Here we see an example of one census block, and census block can be combined to form block groups. Advance once, and then advance it one more time, and we'll see an example of census tracts, which are groups of block groups. For our districts, the scale of our district, block and block groups will be incorporated. Next slide, please. We also reviewed the citizen voting age population to see if we had a division that might have a minority population greater than 50% in a division. In our district, this was not a concern. It was not the case. Next slide, please. We did see some major changes between the 2010 and 2020 census, primarily in the size and shape of the census blocks. The U.S. Census Bureau redrew our census block, or all the census blocks, and in our district, reduced the number by 463. What did increase was the total population, which increased by about greater than 16,000 to add to our total population. Next slide, please. The changes to the census block size and shape, that was the biggest driver for any changes proposed to our current voter divisions. And in this slide, in the black outlines, we see a map of our district, and the black outlines represent the 1,356 census blocks that were used in 2010, I'm sorry, 1,356 in 2010. Next slide, please. Now we see the block outlines updated, and there's a total here of 863 census blocks. What generally happened when the areas of little or no, with census blocks in 2010 that had little or no population, they were consolidated into form blocks of a different size of area coverage in 2020. An example of this change in block we can see in our Eastern Service area. If we advance the slide, we'll see the solid orange area pop up. This represents a single census block in the 2020 census data, so a 2020 census block. The same area in 2010 was covered by 9 census blocks. Click on the slide, we'll see the 2010 9 census blocks show up on the black outline on top of the orange. So just an example of how the changes to the geography of the census block are definitely significant and are our primary driver for the proposed changes that we're seeing today. And the goal of our analysis, as mentioned, was population equality between divisions. I will be presenting two options today. Both options are below the 10% total deviation. Sorry, both options are below the 10% threshold of total population deviation between divisions. And both options follow census block or block group geography. Other considerations to be evaluated were the incorporated area of the city of Santee, the city of Santee's boundary, and also unincorporated areas that fall within our Eastern service area. We saw an area of unique service, our sewer only area, and we preserved that. And overall, we wanted to minimize the impact that it would have on voters. Next slide. Said both options are going to be below our 10% total deviation threshold. Option one gets us closest to our target populations with the lowest total deviation. It has a total deviation of 2.8% and closely follows the census block group, the census block geography. I'm sorry.
It's catching, isn't
it? Yes. It's like, oh man.
Different doing it in person too.
Yeah.
World.
But we have our option one with 2.8 total deviation, and that's going to get us closest to our target populations. Option two is going to show up on here, then advance. Perfect. It has a higher total deviation. It's at 7.2%, and it follows the larger block group geography. Both of these options have an exception for Division 5, which has two separate areas with census blocks that are not adjacent to each other. That's a pretty good example of our major exceptions to secondary considerations. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at option one. This map this map has shaded areas which represents our option one proposed voter divisions. The white text on each division is the total population for that division, and that total population is also seen in the chart on the lower left. What we can see also on this map are black outlines which represent our current voter division boundaries. And the current voter division boundaries, and I want to point out that the overall district boundary has not changed. So including the El Monte area in our Eastern service area, our district extents have stayed the same. So this is option one. We have option two. Option two is presented in the same way with proposed voter divisions as in shaded areas. On top of those is the black outlines of our current divisions, and the black numbers represent the current division numbers. Next slide. You might have noticed there's not too much difference between both of these options. The main difference is if they follow the smaller block group geography in option one, follow the block geography in option one, or block group geography in option two. The red areas on the slide now indicate these areas of change. Going from left to right, we're going to look at a little more detail in going from left to right. Look at the area on the left-hand side in the red, and it is going to stay, it's going to be in option one, it's going to stay in division one. In option two, it would move to division two and follow its census block group. A little more over to the right, we have another area, and this area would stay in division three in option one or move to division one in option two. Just to the northeast of that, we have an area that would stay in division 5 in option 1 or move to division 3 in option 2, again, following its census block group, which has a little bit bigger footprint than the smaller census blocks. Next slide. So both of these options 1 and 2, have less than the 10% total deviation between divisions. Option 1 gets us closest to our target population with the lowest total deviation. Option 2 has a higher deviation and follows the block group geography. Next slide. And it's the staff's recommendation that the board president open up the public hearing and request comments on the redistricting options.
Okay, that's the end of your presentation.
That's the end.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. Amy, do we have any public comments, either written or verbal?
We didn't receive any written comments for this item, and I'll give we do have members of the public attending, so if they wish to speak, if you'd use the raise hand feature in the platform, I'll call on you as your hand is raised. So far, we're not getting it. So far, we are not seeing any.
No comments?
No comments at this point.
Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing at this time. Board members, if you have any questions, would you raise your hand, please? Director Wilson.
I'd like to move option 1 as presented.
I'm sorry, did you move for approval?
Yes.
Yes, I'm
Move
sorry.
approval.
Thank you. Director Till, you were next.
I have a comment, so I'll just wait till.
Oh, you can make your comment.
Super job on that interactive GIS.
Oh, good.
Super job. I don't know if it's possible, but it would be great to put that onto the board page. We had a question what was going on with El Monte Valley. I was just zooming in. It was clear as day. And then you also have that wonderful button as your location. The only question I had on it was I tried to put in my address and I couldn't seem to get it to work, but I can talk to you.
We can try to figure that out.
Afterwards, but yes, I'm just so happy it's there. And I actually saw things that I could not really see, like my division goes all the way to Santana, yay, always want another high school. So I just want to say fabulous job. Thank you very much.
Director Peasley.
I will second the motion for option 1. And I think it's the best option for 2 reasons. One, it's the most accurate, and moving to a higher. If you went to option 2, it'd probably be out of date in a handful of years. So I like option 1 the best.
Okay, any other comments? Motion by Director Wilson to approve staff recommendations, seconded by Director Peasley. Amy, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Director Karas.
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Till,
Yes.
Director Peasley,
Yes.
and Director Palmering.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. I'd like to ask the general manager if you would please have detailed maps of each division issued to each of the directors at the earliest opportunity, whenever that should be. That way they will have them for future reference. Okay, moving on to item number 6, annual review of Board of Directors per diem compensation. Little presentation by Amy Peterson.
Yes, thank you, President Palmering. Good afternoon, members of the public. I'll be reviewing, summarizing the staff report included in today's agenda report. This is an annual review of the board compensation. It's a 2-part process, and today's consideration is only to determine if they wish to consider an increase in that per diem. The second part of that, should they choose to increase the per diem, requires notice of a public hearing at a future meeting. And a little background on what we've done. So increases are limited to 5% per year under the water code. Sorry, thank you.
Sorry, Amy. Sorry.
It's catchy.
I'll get it. So they're limited to 5% per year since the last adjustment under the water code. The last 2 years, the board has not increased its per diem in light of the COVID pandemic. So that means this year, should you wish to increase the per diem, you have the option to go up to 15%. That's allowed under the law. Just as a matter of practice, the prior 3 increases you tied to the employee COLA that was given for that fiscal year. And then any increase becomes effective 60 days after approval. And for this, we tie it to our fiscal year, so it would become effective July 1. So I'll review some options that I just included in the agenda package in the event you do wish to increase your per diem. Currently, the fiscal year 23 budget, which is part of our new 5-year plan, it hasn't been approved yet. So this is obviously the time to consider any adjustments. We're currently budgeting $88,000 on an annual basis. The boards, and that's based on the board's annual average of attending 8 meetings per month. You're limited to 10 meetings per month under the law. So this chart on the left-hand side, on the left column shows potential increases, the amount of potential increases you can consider. The second column shows the annual average amount. And the third column includes the maximum annual amount that would be established under the limit of 10 meetings per month. The board's current per diem is $145 per meeting, and that's only 1 meeting per day. So up to 10 per month. And of course, that right now totals $87,000 annual on a maximum basis. And then just to point out, if you kept it in practice with the prior 3 increases, this year's COLA for employees will be 3.25%. So that would be an adjustment up to $150. And then, of course, the maximum, I'll just point that out, is $166. That number is rounded down so that you don't exceed the 15% allowed under the law. So the recommendation is this is totally up to the board's discretion. And if you do want to consider an increase, that amount needs to be identified so that it can be included in the public hearing notice. And the public hearing notice would be set for April 20th so that it could be effective by the July 1. date.
Thank you, Amy. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Public comment.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments? Director Peasley.
I'd just like to make a comment if I could, Bill. I would recommend to the board to seriously consider not changing the COLA at all, or excuse me, the per diem amount at all. I think it's sufficient for the 8 meetings on average we attend. I'd like to leave it as it is. Any increase at all, even though very minor, would have an impact on rates. And I like the fact that we're keeping it the same. And I think it's a good practice, and I would like to the rest of the board to consider that thought.
Any other comments from any other directors? Director Karras?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's fine not to make any changes this year.
Okay, so I have, was yours a motion, Director Peasley?
I'd like to make a motion not to make an adjustment, to keep the rate the same, the per diem per day the same.
Director Karras, was yours a second to that motion?
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
I would also, just for public record, I would just also like to mention that the time that board members put in is not necessarily representative of the length of the meeting or the time spent in a committee meeting. If you're doing your job as a board member, you're putting in a lot of hours getting ready for those committee meetings, those board meetings. And certainly this is not indicative of the time that's put in. It's just a flat amount for attending a meeting. Having a motion made by Director Peasley, seconded by Director Karras, Amy, would you call the roll, please?
Director Karras?
Yes.
Director Wilson?
Director Wilson, I think you're muted.
Can't even see if he's speaking. His name is over.
You may be
Maybe
frozen.
frozen. Okay, I'll come back to him.
Okay.
Director Till?
Yes.
Stop moving.
Director Peasley?
Yes.
And Director Palmering?
Absolutely, yes.
Director Wilson, can you hear us? I think he has, Director Wilson, you appear to be frozen on our side and you are muted.
He's on ice.
Want to give him a minute?
Oh, how would we record that vote?
We wouldn't, it has to be an oral vote, so it would just be considered absent.
Okay. Okay, that's the decision of the board. Great.
Can we go back to it, Bill? If his issue gets resolved?
I don't think there's a need to. If he wants to make a comment, we can certainly let him do that. I don't know how long he's been frozen. Jim.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, moving on to item number. I hope this doesn't befall you like it did everyone so far.
You guys really want to hear this?
Semi-annual report on the 5-year business plan for the 6 months ended December 31st. 2021. Karen Jasoy. Hi, Karen.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Karen Jasoy, CFO, and I'm presenting the 6 months ending December 31st semi-annual report, financial report. And next slide. So this is the statement of combined operations. I'm just going to quickly mention the bottom line here because I'm going to talk about the individual operations, but the change in net assets overall for the district is favorable by $4.3 million, and each operation has a different impact on that. So this chart shows this and future charts show the actual in blue and the budget in green. And so, and it goes from retail, recycled, sewer, park, in case it's very small on the screen if you're not seeing it very well. So this is showing that operating revenues for all operations except for recycled, just by a slight bit, were either right close to budget or over budget. Next slide. Direct costs were really good budgeters. It's pretty right on target for the direct costs. And the operating expenses for all operations are below the budget. Non-operating and depreciation, each operation slightly, except for recycled, each operation is just slightly over the budget. And then this shows the change in net assets, which is really the combination of all those ups and downs. And so you can see that the impact of the revenue, the favorable revenue, is a lot more than any of the other, and the reduction in operating expenses are the biggest drivers in this. So the change in net assets here, we have about $3 million favorable for potable water. We're just about $100,000 different on recycled. We have about $800,000 on sewer, and then park has exceeded. We were doing the budget around the time of COVID. We didn't know it was going to be happening. So they've done better than projected by about $700,000. This chart here shows the fund balances, current fund balances, and then the red line dot end lines are where the fund balances were at the beginning of the year, and then where we're budgeting for them to be at the end of the year. So all of them are budgeted to be lower than they are currently because of additional expenditures in CIP. This chart shows the fund balances again, where the budgeted end of the plan. So this is the same information as the other chart, but what this is showing is where we are now, where we expect to be, and then compared to the board maximum and the board minimum. And so for example, potable water is under the board maximum, but above the board minimum at the end of the year. And so you can go through all of those, and that's the same for sewer, under the board maximum. Recycled's over board maximum, and park is right about at the board maximum. Next slide. And this is a graph that is rebalancing the fund balances. If you remember when we set up the CIP fund, that was done. I had a whole agenda item on that, and that was done with forecasts through the end of the year. And we took the balance that was over the CRF and the CEF, and we put it over to the CIP. And then, and now after we have audited results, this is to rebalance it. So you can see that What I had been intending to do for example, for potable water was to have $21 million in the RSF fund and $12 million to the CRF fund. And because of things being different than they were projected, they got out of whack. So this is just putting it back to where it was originally supposed to be. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Amy, do we have any comments from the public?
Michael's going to be speaking specifically about CIP, so.
Okay. Ellen, do you have anything today since you were checking?
Oh, no. not-
Okay, that's good. And we'll turn it over to Michael. Mr. Hindle, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you. Try to get through this clearly. This figure here was included in your board agenda packet. It's relatively self-explanatory. I wasn't going to spend time speaking to this. You could advance to the next slide. This figure shows the same information included in the agenda packet, just presented in a different format. And I wanted to highlight, starting with the green portions of the pie. It might be difficult for you to see, but the darker portion of the pie represents 10% or $2.7 million that's been expended or spent in the first half of fiscal year 2022. Now, if I move to the next portions of the green shaded pie, those next two components, I'm going to combine those two. So 37% or $13.1 million is either already been committed this fiscal year or anticipated to be committed. So that includes Pump Station Improvements Project, which was awarded by the board in February. The next, I would say, big CIP project that will be committed in this fiscal year will be the Blossom Valley Reservoir Project, the design. Now, moving on to the blue portions of the pie, this represents the works that is not committed or not anticipated to be committed by end of plan. And I will highlight that the dark blue component of the pie represents 21% or $6 million of the budget amount in fiscal year 2022. This is budget that's being deferred, and primarily due to the AWP program and for facilities that don't require investments at this time. So examples would include the IPS expansion, sludge main improvements, race storage, WRF projects. It just doesn't make sense to make these investments at this time. Now, the final lighter portion of the pie, this was allocated for projects that are working their way through the engineering process. They're in the preliminary phase. They're not projects that are completely stalled. We're still moving them forward. But we don't anticipate that that budget will be utilized or committed by the end of this plan. And there's a few projects that are highlighted in the agenda packet. And I just wanted the board to know that we've encountered many changes over this 5-year budgeting cycle, and some of these changes did influence the timing of making these renewal investments in our assets. The AWP program is a prime example of a major change that does influence timing of some of these investments in these projects. And we just really didn't account for these at the onset of the current plan. I did also want to address one item, that one of our goals in the CIP department is to expend or commit 85% of the overall budget in the CIP. And we're off task on this goal. But we're also guided by 3 principles in the CIP, and that's developing a system that's reliable, developing a system that is resilient, and also developing a system that's affordable for our customers. So to this end, we do scrutinize the timing of making these renewal investments and make sure that it makes sense for our customers. And really, the ultimate goal here is optimizing service lives of our assets for the lowest possible rates to our customers. So in conclusion, I wanted the board to know that all the highest priority projects identified in this current business plan will be completed or committed by the end of this fiscal year. And staff's going to continually effectively manage these budgets in a manner that really promotes the ratepayer affordability side of things. So that concludes my presentation. Any questions on the CIP component or financial component for Karen?
Thank you, Michael. Amy, any comments from the public?
We have none.
Board members, please raise your hand if you have any questions. Director Peasley?
Pardon me. just as I was going to speak. Michael, I greatly appreciate that slide and the explanation you had. And I like it that you continually review the CIP projects and move them as necessary or as deemed appropriate, consistent with operations needs and the renewal and replacement of the projects. It's definitely the right thing to do, and it's in the best interest of the ratepayers to do so. And I appreciate it. So we don't, just because the money's there, doesn't mean you get to spend it. It just means it's there in case it's needed to be spent. So thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask for any other questions, I noticed that Director Wilson has returned. Director Wilson, can you hear us? It looks like you're muted, Director Wilson.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
There you go. Very good. Do you have any comments, Director Wilson?
No, I just came in on the tail end of that, so sorry.
Okay.
I got totally kicked off the internet.
Okay. Appreciate you coming back. Seeing no other questions or comments, this was an informational report only, no action required by the board. We'll move on to item number 8, legislative. I'm sorry, Alan.
That's okay. I just wanted to add a couple of things. First of all, thank you to Karen and her team for putting it all together. And one of the with regard to the CIP, one of the benefits of the 5-year business plan is the flexibility that it provides to staff. And so I appreciate the board in that policy decision to allow a 5-year business plan. And then secondly, we show a lot of revenue and expenses, and it's always good to remind the board and the public that, with regard to the park is self-sufficient. It does not receive rate or tax subsidy in any way, shape, or form. All of the revenue generated comes through the campers and the users of the park. So we're proud of that, and certainly is a feather in the district's.
Yeah.
Are we working on our 3rd 5-year plan?
Yes, and I was just going to mention that the favorable results that we've had compared to budget have to do with not just like Director Peasley said in regards to the CIP. That's what we're experiencing in terms of the operating expenses. Just because we had it, we're not spending it, and we've sold more water, and that's why our reserves were higher. That all of those prior years in this 5-year business plan are going to help us in the next 5-year business plan. So the balances that we have in the reserves will help to offset increases that we would otherwise have to have. So it'll be used to offset, but not now.
And a big thank you to Director Wilson, who was the father and the architect of the 5-year business plan, and the boards that have approved the prior 2 5-year plans. They've worked extremely well for the ratepayers and for the overall fiscal safety nets for the district. So thank you, Director Wilson. Glad you were unfrozen and you could hear that. So
it was a
thank
team.
you, Karen.
It was a team effort. Totally a team effort.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We'll move on to legislative updates. That's Melissa McChesney. Sure. Okay.
Good afternoon. My first presentation today is our legislative update for March. And so if we can go to the next slide. Perfect. So a quick update on where we are on the legislative session. The last day for bills to be introduced for the 2022 session was February 18th. So what that means is that we will have no new bills. However, as we all know, the existing bills can be changed to something completely new. So we're in a really exciting time. So March is the beginning of many committee hearings. And so I'm not going to talk about every bill that we have on our list that we're tracking today, but I hope to give you a good idea of what is out there right now and some of the key items that we are following. So as I mentioned, March continues to be full of committee hearings until the legislature goes on recess on April 7th. So the first item I wanted to touch, this is a little bit old now, but we had this report delayed a few times, and I wanted to just make sure that you did know about this. And this is AB 84. It's supplemental COVID sick leave. And this bill has already been passed, signed into law, and is retroactive back to January 1st, and does provide sick leave pay for any COVID illness for an employee as well as their family, as well as time for employees to go out and receive their COVID vaccine or booster or recovery from those things for a maximum of up to 80 hours. And it goes from the time period of January 1st of this year through September 30th of this year. Okay, the next one that I wanted to talk about is AB 148, and this is COVID arrearages. This is an item that you've heard not only during the legislative updates, but also from Karen. And I wanted to mention a couple things on this that are new information. So we did receive funding from the first round of the arrearages timeline. That timeframe ended on December, no, it did not. It ended on June of 2021. The current proposal is to look to extend it through the end of 2021. And so what that means is that what all agencies would have to do is go back, recalculate any of those missed arrearages, and look at that additional 6-month time frame. The challenge with this that I will mention is that the legislature is likely to not take this up and consider and move into law this extension until about June of this year. And if a customer pays that arrear now, it no longer then qualifies for that. So there are some challenges with that extension, but it is something that's being considered by the legislature. In addition to that, there is a new program that's coming forward called the LIWAP program that we are looking into as an agency as well, that may help to avoid that ability for us to have to hold on to arrearages for that extended period of time. So more to come on that item. Okay, the next item is indoor water use. So we had a bill last year, SB 1434, by Senator Friedman. That bill she decided not to carry forward. However, Senator Hertzberg took the language from that bill and took the language from DWR's proposed standards report and put it into a new bill, SB 1157. And what this bill looks to do is to reduce indoor water use to 42 gallons per capita per day by 2030. We have some real concerns with this particular bill because DWR did not fully research and analyze the impact on water systems that dropping to that 42 gallons per capita per day will do. And so Padre Diem has joined Aqua's coalition of oppose unless amended on this particular bill. Next bill is AB 2142. This bill is on turf replacement rebates. So if a customer takes out existing living grass, places it through a turf replacement rebate program, such as the one that we have through the Metropolitan Water District, this bill would allow them to exempt that rebate from taxable income in California. There would be a certain period of time that would exist. I believe right now they're looking at about a 5-year time frame for that. And this bill is an Aqua-sponsored bill. The next topic is open and public meetings. So as you know, at the beginning of this meeting, we talked about AB 361. That bill is a short period of time bill and sunsets at the beginning of 2024. There are 2 additional bills currently in the legislature that are being considered related to these teleconferencing and virtual type meetings. They are AB 1944 and AB 2449. The idea here is that these bills are ultimately going to be reconciled into one because they have some similarities. The language is very similar with a few differences, but what it will do is update some of the technology standards for for teleconferencing meetings. It will require remote commenting, and it will also eliminate permanently the need to publish addresses for offsite board members in a remote meeting setting. So again, more to come on this one. It'll likely, one bill over the other will reconcile into the other and will be one bill, and we'll continue to watch what happens as it moves forward. So just a few other items. I'm not going to go into detail on these, but I wanted to mention them. There is a bill on development fees and capacity charges that we're following. AB 23, AB 7 is the Bond Act of 2022. This is a lot of climate change initiatives. The thought amongst the water industry is that this probably does not have enough time to pass and get through to the ballot in November, but there is a lot of talk about supporting it to encourage future funding for water projects. And so we'll continue to see what happens with that. It's likely to not make its way all the way through. AB 2811 is recycled water and dual plumbing on non-potable systems. So this could have an impact on future AWP projects. And so we want to make sure that we continue to follow it and see what happens. We are at the very beginning of the session for the most part. So a lot of these things could drop off, but are important for us to continue to follow. AB 2016 is a desalination plant feasibility study that's being proposed to be completed by 2025 to determine what type of desalination projects make the most sense for California in the future. SB 892 requires cybersecurity plans to be developed by all public agencies throughout the state of California. And then lastly, I threw this one in there because I just think that it's highly unlikely that it will move anywhere and wanted to share it. But SB 1219 creates a blue ribbon commission and dissolves the State Water Resources Control Board by 2025. So if that one passes, I'll be sure to let you know, but we'll see what happens on that one. So a few other topics of interest that are not necessarily active bills. And one is this initiative that is named the limit ability of voters and state and local governments to raise revenues for government services. So I'm going to let legal counsel touch on this one a little bit, but I did want to mention that there is a coalition that CSDA is developing in opposition to this particular bill.
Yes, sure. And just so you know, so Melissa just went over what the Attorney General's circulation title is, but the proponent wanted to call it the Taxpayer Protection of Government Accountability Act. So what this will do, it'll negatively impact public agencies in a number of ways. Know that there was a worse version of this for public agencies, really restricting the way that public agencies can increase revenue that's necessary to provide services. It will eliminate the ability to adopt a special tax by initiative by 50% plus one approval, despite recent case law to the contrary. It will restrict the ability to charge fees for services to actual cost, which removes a lot of discretion from local agencies with respect to how to allocate unrestricted revenues. And so this could impede some agencies' ability to offer low-income discounts or subsidies for services provided. It requires that fees for use of government property be reasonable, which currently is an issue being litigated at this court and may impact franchise fees and tolls. Those will impact cities and counties. Increases the evidentiary burden to clear and convincing evidence. Right now, the current standard is a preponderance of the evidence for non-property related fees or substantial evidence for Proposition 218 related fees. And this will increase costs of litigation and make it even more difficult for agencies to adopt rates and defend them once they're in place. We already are very restricted in how a public agency can adopt rate increases. And it also creates new procedural requirements for adopting fees and taxes. The circulation deadline for this is June 6th. They only, in order to be placed on the ballot, it only needs 900 997,139 signatures, and it's pretty certain that they will get those. So it'll be an interesting thing to get through.
So more to come likely on this one, but we'll continue to follow it as well. So two other initiatives or topics to mention real briefly. One is the More Water Now initiative this was brought up at a prior meeting and asked to bring back an update on what the district had done. So this was titled the Water Infrastructure Funding Act of 2022. And the desire here was to take 2% of the state's general fund and put it towards projects to increase water supply up to 5 million acre feet throughout the state of California. The initiative is not moving forward. It did not get the traction that it needed to get signatures. And so it now is considering moving its entire initiative to the 2024 ballot. And the district never took a position or considered a position on this particular initiative. It really never got to a point where it was something that water agencies were really taking up because, as I mentioned, it didn't have the motivation to move forward and is now looking at going to 2024. And then the last topic I wanted to touch on today is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And so this particular law passed on November 15th. It allocates funding to a variety of categories that you see there on the right-hand side. And it provides funding through multiple different entities. A few of those entities for water projects are listed there. And it also adds funding into some existing buckets of funding, such as Title 16, the WIN Act, the State Revolving Fund. There is a fairly small amount of water funding. It's $55 billion for the entire nation. And so we will continue to follow and watch this and look for funding opportunities. But it is a fairly new bill or a fairly new law. And so in a lot of cases, the funding is still being rolled out. The programs are still being developed. And so it's just another item that we are continuing to add to our potential opportunities for the agency. And then I promise you, this is my last slide before questions on legislation. So I did mention at our last meeting that we are working, we have contracts with NOSAMIN for the East County Advanced Water Purification Project for state and federal lobbying efforts. So I wanted to mention a few highlights of particular efforts. Under the state relations, we have been moving forward with a state budget request. And I'm very happy and excited to share that Assemblymember Weber is going to be the champion of that state budget request. We do have support from Senator Jones and Assemblyman Vopel as well, but she is going to be the champion of that request, which is fantastic. And so we're working on the next steps for that particular effort. And then on the federal front, we are working with our advocates in DC on WRDA authorization, which is another program similar to the WIN program and the WIFIA program and the SRF program that would allow us to be authorized for additional funding in some format. And we are working with our DC team as well on some appropriations funding with Sarah Jacobs' office right now. So we'll continue to provide updates on those efforts as well, but some really great activity happening there. And with that, that's the end of my legislative update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the report. Any public comments?
No comments.
None? Okay, directors, if you have any comments or questions, please raise your hand. Director Till.
Can we go back, HR 3684, Infrastructure Jobs Act? I don't know if it's possible, I don't know if AWP has thought about this, but there's $107.5 billion for energy, and we're talking about natural gas power. Is there any way we could look into that possibly with AWP on the energy side? Just throwing that out there as a possibility.
That is an element. The energy piece is something that our DC team is looking at.
Okay.
They're not just looking at this particular pot of funding, they're looking across the board at where, and
Okay, and then forward 2 slides. Next slide. No, not that one. Next, no, keep going.
This way.
Forward. There, stop there. Federal relations, are we talking to Padilla or Feinstein about this?
we've met with both of them. They are on our list of continuing to update on the project. The only reason they're not on this particular slide is that they were not part of our activity in this particular month. But we've already briefed them on the project recently in December, I believe, and we'll continue to update them as well.
The other thing, I think, and again, this goes back to the energy side of it, is the carbon footprint. And I have been doing some research on this, but the carbon footprint of repurified water is less than desal water. And I think that's something we need to keep emphasizing also on that. Because I know that there's desal projects trying to get money and we should be ahead of them. Thank you very much to our board and our staff for being so ahead of the game on this. I really appreciate that. So, thank you.
Directors, any other comments?
No, sir.
Seeing none, this was an informational report only, no action required, but since you're standing there, let's move on to item number 9, the water supply update.
Well, I don't know which item was more better news, but we'll see what we can do here with the water supply update. So starting off with San Diego conditions, because these conditions don't have a huge impact on Padre Dam, but we have seen only 68% of average precipitation in the San Diego region to date, which is kind of an indicator of what you're going to hear the rest of the report, that our water supply throughout the state and Colorado River are not have as high of levels as we would like to see. So, okay, so this next slide in here is actually from my report initially in January, and I only left it in there to show you where we were in January and where we had a lot of hope for the water supply season. But that moves us into our next slide that shows where we've been since then. We had the driest start to 2022 of any other year in California history. January and February essentially saw almost no precipitation, no snow. There are 4 inches of precipitation needed in the northern part of the state throughout between now and the end of March in order to avoid the driest first quarter in the history of the state. One of the things that's really important to note that DWR is really following and the State Water Board is following is the challenging weather patterns that we're seeing. So that last slide showed you we had record snowfall in December, and now we've seen this first quarter be one of the driest in history. And so that's something that they're really looking at, and the conversations are changing from what we saw in the prior drought to now. And they're really looking at how do we look at these new weather patterns and look at maybe what the San Diego region has already done and built that reliability. So that's where we've seen the start, and I'll go into a little bit more of the details here. This just shows you the snow survey results. For 2022, you see it starts off January and slides its way down to March. January reflects the really record snowpack that we had in the end of December storms and early January storms. At the end of March, we are looking at 66% of statewide average for snowpack. This slide shows you our state reservoir conditions, and the stars that you see there on the right represent the reservoirs throughout the state that are at least 95% or above in historical capacity. A couple things I wanted to note is that currently 7% of California remains in what's considered severe drought by the drought monitor. And then just to touch on, because this is our third driest year, 2020 through 2022 have seen drier and hotter conditions than we've seen in the past couple of dry periods. And so you're hearing the messaging change a little bit on what they're attempting to do at the state level and how they're looking to change the reaction this particular period. So statewide water use, this is part of where we're seeing the state is going to take some action. We don't know what that action looks like yet, but this information is really important as to why. So that bottom bullet point, the 15%, is the target that the governor gave to the state back in July of 2021. And since then, we have only seen a 6.4% statewide reduction. And in January, we saw a 2.6% increase in water use compared to 2020. And so the reason that that's important is that we are continuing to push the message here in San Diego of reliability and resilience and all of the different efforts that the San Diego region has taken. However, this is what the state's looking at. And so it's just important for us to note that so that we understand what may be happening on and coming down from them. We haven't heard how they're going to react to the current numbers, but there is a lot of talk that they're considering a mandatory target versus that 15% target. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. I don't know if that's on my next slide, but no. Let me just stay on this one for just a minute. And I apologize because I think this is in my later slide, but we'll just skip over it then. Aqua, CMUA, CSDA, and others, the California Water Association are working very hard to push a stress test option with the state. And what that looks like is very similar to what we saw during the last drought. At the beginning, they put this blanket mandate across the state, but by the end of the last drought, San Diego and Padre Diem were able to say, hey, here's what our numbers look like. Here's what we actually have as water availability. And we were able to actually reduce that mandatory target. And I believe we got down to a 0% reduction, while parts of the state were still at the much higher numbers. And so they're continuing to push for an effort like that again. We'll continue to be a part of that anywhere that we can. But just know that that is something, this is what the state's looking at, but they're also hearing from these different associations to really push for that stress test approach moving forward. So next slide is the start of the Colorado River Basin. Can you click one more time? Perfect. So this shows, these numbers are a little bit deceiving because what you're hearing is that the precipitation on the Colorado River Basin is almost at that average amount. However, because they have such dry soils and they've been in this dry period for an extensive period of time, the water runoff that they're getting is not as high as they'd like because the soil is so dry. And so this slide shows kind of where we're at precipitation wise. The next slide gives a better picture of what the Colorado River Basin conditions are. So as of yesterday, Lake Powell dropped below 3,525 feet, which was the elevation target that they were really hoping for. That leaves the dam only 35 feet above what they need to create power. So they expect that will go back up in about two to 3 months as they begin to see snowfall. But they anticipate that it'll continue to drop back down at an even earlier point in the future. And so it's an indicator that the Bureau of Reclamation is really looking closely at. And then in response to that, they are looking at releasing a new drought operations plan in April. And again, probably not a huge impact to us here in California, but just something to continue to watch and see as we continue to see conditions along the Colorado River Basin. So an overview is that we are in our third straight dry year for California, that we do have this stress test plus being proposed to the state, and we'll keep our fingers crossed on the success of that. And then the last bullet point that I have in here on 2015 is just like my thrown out hope and desire that along the Colorado River Basin, they had record snow accumulation in May. that saved them from an even worse outcome for that particular year. So that's just to say, it's highly unlikely that we will see a lot of change between now and the end of the water year. But that we have seen more bizarre things happen. And so we'll see what happens over the next couple of months.
Thank you, Melissa. Amy, public comment.
No one with their hand raised.
None? Directors, if you have any comments or questions, please raise your hand. Director Till?
I think it's important to restate the elephant in the room on this. And I'm looking at two documents here. First is California Department of Water Resources and on climate change and water. And the first sentence is climate change is already impacting water and other resources in California and will continue to do so as California's population and demand for water increases. And also that climate change is expected to result in more variable weather patterns. We are seeing that right now. I also looked at aqua, which also makes climate change. They call it more climate resilience, but there is a recognition of climate change. And basically it is drought, flood, fire, and climate change. And we're here. And at least according to the scientists. There is a report out that Western United States is in the worst drought in 1,200 years. And that is measured, like if you want, I can go through how we just did that in my classes, so how you do that. This was done through triggering analysis. So anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, Derek, President Pomeroy, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Director Wilson. I saw you.
Because I haven't got my video says I'm up, but I can't see myself. So I did want to make a comment as well. And the comment I have is when I was a first pretty new board member in the water business back in the early 90s, I asked a guy by the name of Lester Snow, who was then the general manager of the County Water Authority, went on to, at the state level, to hold a lot of water positions. But I said, what's the answer for water reliability in San Diego? I mean, what can we do? Is the answer desal? Is the answer water transfers? Is the answer recycling? What is it? And he said something to me I've never forgotten, and it really holds up to be true. He said, all of the above. And the reason for why all of the above makes sense is because, and it's what the County Water Authority and the folks in San Diego started, 2.5, 3 decades ago, was to diversify the portfolio and have not just rely on one source, imported water from metropolitan, but pursue a variety of sources. And part of the reason that's so important is because every new water source takes maybe 10 years to accomplish, both in terms of facilities as well as litigation and so forth. So, I'm really glad as we look at this major climate change that Director Till appropriately points out and was the subject of the CAWA presentation this morning, that San Diego didn't wait around for this drought, for this crisis, and pursued all of these options, including desal, which admittedly is more expensive water, but including the transfer from QSA supplies in the Imperial Valley, including local supply development. And it puts us in a much, the bad news is that costs us, the ratepayers, more money to fund that. But the good news is that the water's still flowing out of the tap and looks like we're in pretty good shape for the foreseeable future. So I'm proud to have been part of that process, and along with a whole lot of other people smarter than me that figured out all of the above with the right approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Any other comments? Seeing none, water supply update was an information report only, no action required by the board. Moving on to item number 10, board reports. County Water Authority Board of Directors meeting, that will be next Thursday, I believe. Are you sure? Next week? Yeah. It's next week, right? Metro Commission, Metro Wastewater JPA, Director Peasley, do you have anything to add to your written report?
I don't know, about 3 pages worth of words and just trying to report on all the things that are going on down there. And they have significant dollar implications to everyone in the county that are on the sewer system of the city and the city, of course, themselves. So I don't really have anything to add. However, we just today had a meeting on the ad hoc committee. And so that was an interesting bit of information that occurred there. We didn't get much accomplished. We did learn that the city of San Diego authorized, the city council authorized, I think the number was $40 million. Was it $40 million to build a demonstration facility at the Point Loma facility for phase 2 of their reclamation pure water program. And they never brought it to Metro. So we're curious as to why that's the case. And so there's some interesting information that came out of the meeting today. So anyway, so we'll keep you in tune to what's going on. Those ad hoc committee meetings are going to occur twice a month. I suppose I'll write a brief summary of what occurred, perhaps in addition to this, if that is what you desire, Chair or President.
Entirely up to you, sir.
Okay. So anyway, so those ad hoc committees are going to be twice a month, and they still have that looming deadline for the second and restated agreement for which I think is called the parking lot items in August. I think it's August 23rd. So they're pushing hard to get it done.
Okay, thank you. East County Economic Development Council, that was a meeting this morning. I submitted a written report. If anyone has any questions or comments, please let me know. Other meetings, conferences, events attended by directors per AB 1234. I know Cowell was held. I believe, Amy, written reports were submitted by me, by Director Wilson. Director Karras, did he submit a report?
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
But he
Okay.
will.
No,
But
he
will.
didn't. He will,
Director
yes.
Beasley, did you submit a report or plan on?
On Kawa,
On Kawa.
I can write a report that says I didn't attend.
Oh, okay. Well, hold it to one page.
Okay,
If
I'll
you
keep
would,
it
I'd
to one
appreciate
page.
it.
Not too many words.
Directors, do you have any other meetings to report? Move on to directors' comments. Director Karras? Any director's comments? None? Director Till? No director comments? Director Wilson?
No comment.
Director Peasley?
I'm going to be very busy on the Metro issues here for the next 6 months or so.
Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate that. District Council, I have no comments at this time. District Council?
Yeah, I was just going to report on a couple things that are happening at LAFCO, at San Diego LAFCO. For a while there, San Diego LAFCO was trying to push forward an amendment to provision of the government code section 56133, which governs the ability of an agency to provide services outside of its boundaries. There are a number of exceptions that allow a public agency to provide services outside of its boundaries that the legislature has carved out as exceptions. And what LAFCO wanted to do is instead of making a policy around it, like some LAFCOs have, they wanted to change the law to make sure that in order to have an exception apply, that LAFCO make that determination. There was a lot of pushback from CSDA, from the League of Cities, and they were unable to get a sponsor to push that bill forward. They were doing it together with CSDA. So they've abandoned that effort. It's a couple of years of an effort that they were trying to do to get this moving. The other item is something that's being handled through the Special District Advisory Committee. It's a revision to San Diego LAFCO Rule 4, and it deals with provision of new or different services or functions. It might not necessarily apply that much to this district, but anytime an agency wants to activate a power, to provide a power or exercise, provide a service that it is authorized under its organic law, in this case, it would be the Municipal Water District of 1911, Municipal Water District Law of 1911. For example, a municipal water district can provide fire services. So if you wanted to do that, you'd have to go to LAFCO to apply for it. Well, the definitions for what the services are and functions, which LAFCO has to, I should back up. When LAFCOs do its periodic municipal service reviews of all local agencies within the boundaries of the county, it does an audit and it enumerates what services an agency currently provides, what services are considered to be activated. And so all the services that Padre Diem, when it has its next service review, will be categorized under services or functions. Services and functions, I guess, within those are subsets of the services. So they're doing a wholesale revision and starting to categorize different services and different functions. And there might be some issues down the road. So it might be something for an agency just to take a look at, because you all might be doing something, decide to stop doing something. And under this new rubric, you'd have to go to LAFCO to get approval to stop doing that something. So it might not be an issue at all, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention and maybe something that y'all should be keeping track of along the way.
It is amazing the myriad number of government and NGO organizations that need to be monitored and worked with in order to make sure that we stay in compliance with everything being done. We're not isolated by any means.
No, and LAFCOs do serve an important role. They are there instead of having to go to the legislature every time we wanted to do something differently, which would be entirely impossible. So each county has a LAFCO to handle these things. But it's just something that I think that all agencies, all special districts within the county should be tracking. And that's all I have.
And hopefully they are.
Yeah.
Kyle, did you have something you wanted to say?
It's something I mentioned under director's comments, circling back to Director Wilson on the per diem, if he wanted to make a comment since we missed him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Director Wilson, did you wish to make a comment on the, I'm assuming you may not know that the action we took was to not change the per diems. Do you have anything you wanted to say on that comment or anything?
Well, I think that's the right approach.
Okay.
Could you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
General Manager's report.
Yeah, considering the length of time that our general counsel took.
I've deferred my report for the last 3 meetings. So I was due.
And you were appreciated.
And I've kicked him under the table already.
You're going to have to mark your kicks in a new shin. Informational reports were attached. They were the monthly delinquency report for February 2022 and the Park Committee Special Board Meeting Minutes of February 23, 2022. We are now going to go in closed session. If you'll take us into closed session.
Yes, the board will be going into closed session for conference with labor negotiators pursuant to government section 54957.6. The agency negotiators being President Pomerang, Paula D'Souza, and Allison Alpert of Best Western Krieger for the unrepresented employee position of future CEO General Manager.
We are in closed session.
I'm gonna
I can't do it. I can't see the fucking tools. I can't.
Aye.